Good morning. Today we will start our poem, Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. Of course, you know that William Shakespeare is one of the greatest English poets. He wrote many sonnets. He wrote about 154 sonnets. What is a sonnet? Slide 2. Sonnet is a 14-line poem, a poem that consists of 14 lines. Before Shakespeare, it was originated in Italy, and it was divided into two parts, octet and sestet. Octet, 8 lines, and sestet, 6 lines. But Shakespeare has divided the sonnet into 4 main parts, 3 quatrains and a heroic couplet. Quatrain means 4 lines, and heroic couplet means 2 lines. A sonnet is a poem that is mainly about one main idea, one main emotion. In Sonnet 18, Shakespeare is comparing his beloved to a summer's day. And he is mentioning the reasons or how different is his beloved from summer's day. And the first 2 lines, slide 3. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. The first line is a question. Shall I compare thee? Thee means you. Of course, Shakespeare wrote Old English. He's asking us, shall I compare thee? Shall I compare you, my beloved, to a summer's day? Of course, he chose summer because summer is the best season in England, where the weather itself is more temperate, more moderate, not too cold and not too hot. In line 2, thou art more lovely and more temperate. Thou, you are more lovely and more temperate. You are better than the summer. Then the coming slide. Now he will mention the points of comparison between his beloved and the summer. He will say that rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. He says that even the winds could be rough, could be bad for the flowers. They could shake them, bother them. So this is number 1. Number 2, summer's lease hath all too short a date. The period of the summer itself is not very long. It's too short. So in the first 4 lines, Shakespeare mentions why he doesn't like the idea of such a comparison. Summer's day is sometimes so windy that it roughly shakes the tiny flowers, and the summer is of a short duration. Then in the other slide, in the coming 2 lines, sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dims. Also, he says that the eye of heaven, the sun, could shine and it becomes very hot, and sometimes it's so cloudy. So here we have a contrast between being too hot because of the eye of heaven, the shining of the sun, and sometimes because of the clouds, it's so cloudy, so depressing. Then in the coming lines, and this is a new slide, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or by nature's changing course untrimmed. Here Shakespeare is stating a very important fact. Every fair from fair sometime declines. He said that every fair, every beautiful thing will stop at a certain point from being beautiful, by accident, by age, by problem. So if you are beautiful now, of course you will stop being beautiful at or by any reason, by chance or nature's changing course, by age, untrimmed. So it's a well-known fact that every beautiful thing at certain point will stop being beautiful either by an accident or naturally by time and death. So he said that the weather or the summer's day could be windy, could be very hot. It will not continue to be fair all the time. It will not be very beautiful all the time. But what about his beloved? Will she continue being lovely and beautiful all the time? He will say the answer for this. The new slide, but thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owes. But your eternal summer shall not fade. Your beauty will not disappear. How? How won't she stop being beautiful? We don't know. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owes. Even the beauty that you have, you will never lose it. So the poet here said that his beloved's youth and beauty will be everlasting, as he is sure that his beloved will always be beautiful and never be affected by the old age. Even death, by the old age, even death will fail to put her in its dark shadow. Then in the new slide, nor shall death brag thou wonders in his shade. Death will never take you when eternal lines to time thou growers. How will you continue to be beauty, or your beauty continue to all the time? When in eternal lines. What are the eternal lines? The lines of poetry. Because he wrote about her, so everyone will talk about her beauty, even if she is now dead. Shakespeare wrote this sonnet from about 400 years ago. But now we are still talking about her beauty. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long live this, and this gives life to thee. So long as men can breathe, can live on earth, or the eyes can see, we can feel her beauty, we can see her, even if she is death. So long lives this, and this gives life to thee. This here is the lines of poetry, the poem that he wrote about his beloved. So she will be affected by the old poetry, which will be always read as long as mankind exists. Then the new slide, or the commentary on this poem. As you can see, the main idea of the poem or of the sonnet is making a comparison between his beloved and the summer's day. The first line is a question: shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And then the answer is included in the second line: thou art more lovely and more temperate. In the next 6 lines, the poet, this is a new slide, in the next 6 lines, the poet gives 4 reasons for refusing the idea of making such comparison. As we said, being windy, hot, cloudy, and short. But his beloved will never change. She is all the time good. She is all the time beautiful. Then in the next 3 lines, he declares that his beloved's youth and beauty will be eternal, will be everlasting, because she will always be present in his poetry. In the last 2 lines, the heroic couplet, as we said, Shakespeare wrote 3 quatrains, 4 lines, then 4 lines, then 4 lines, and at the end, a heroic couplet. In the last 2 lines, the heroic couplet, the poet sums up the idea that his beloved will live forever in the lines of his poetry. New slide, Shakespeare repeats some words to create musical sense. As in the second line, more lovely and more temperate. Fair in line 7 and 10, and every fair from fair sometime declines. Also, he repeated so long in the heroic couplet. As for the figures of speech, they are not much used in the sonnet, except for simple metaphors as describing the sun as the eye of heaven. So he, as we said, he compared the sun or he compared the eye of heaven to the sun. We also have personification in his gold complexion, the equation of youth with summer, and the personification of death. New slide about the questions and the model answer. You have to study the questions. You can add some answers or some points to the questions. This question, where is the main idea focused in Sonnet 18 and how is it developed? Quote the lines from Sonnet 18 showing the negative points that made the poet refuses the idea of comparing his beloved to a summer's day and comment on them. The main idea of the poem is focused on the first line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Then the poet says that his beloved is more beautiful and gentle, and thus he rejects the idea of comparing his beloved to a summer's day. The reason for this rejection, for this refusal, comes in the following 6 lines, when he says that summer is usually coming with rough winds and very hot weather. Also, the days in summer are very short and sometimes cloudy. The poet hopes that his beloved's life will be a long one. She will live in lines of verse, the lines of poetry that cannot die. The common question: what is a sonnet? What is the difference between Italian and Shakespearean sonnet? As we said, that the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines dealing with one idea or emotion, and that idea or emotion is usually a personal one. It's mainly about a personal experience or a personal emotion. The sonnet originated in Italy, and in its first form was divided into 2 parts, as we said, one consisting of 8 lines octet and the other of 6 sestet. However, Shakespeare changed the internal form of the sonnet. He divided the 14 lines into 3 quatrains and a heroic couplet. Then the following question: what will make the lady's beauty everlasting? As we said, if you can remember, that because he wrote about her beauty will be everlasting in the verse of the poet's sonnet, that will be repeated among people forever, as long as men live and as long as they read poetry. The poet's verse, the poem itself, will live, and his beautiful beloved will live in it. People will continue talking about her and her beauty till the end of the life. Thus, she will never lose her beauty. Then the common question: in Sonnet 18, Shakespeare says that poetry defies time. Defy means challenges. So poetry can challenge time. How? Discuss proving your answer by quoting lines. Shakespeare believes that poetry defeats time and death. He says that poetry prevents death and time from frightening the people who are mentioned in the poem. Time will not have any effect on the life of his beloved. She will never change. Thus, his beloved will be away from the shadows of death and the boundaries of time. She will always be there in his poem, nor shall death brag the wonders in his shade. When in internal lines, the lines of poetry, to time thou growest. The common question: what kind of language is used in Sonnet 18? As you can notice, the language here is so simple. The language of the poem is simple, allowing pauses at the end of every line. The meanings are simple and easily understood. The common question: what does the poet use the repetition of certain words? Like so long, more. The poet uses the repetition of certain words to create internal music patterns in the sonnet. For example, more in line 2, fair, line 7, and so long in the final couplet. Then the common question: pick up the figures of speech and mention them in Sonnet 18. Shakespeare, as we mentioned before, uses only a few traditional metaphors in his sonnet, for example, describing the sun as the eye of heaven, also the eternal summer, There is also personification in his gold complexion. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. Then, question number 8, write short notes on Shakespeare. Of course, Shakespeare is one of the greatest poets. He wrote many plays. Shakespeare was born in 1564 and died in 1616. He wrote 37 plays, which are Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello, and many other plays, besides much poetry. And while he lived, Shakespeare was very popular for his audience of the theater. He is well known because he is actually not of one age, but for all time. He was an actor. He made many things to be remembered by. Thanks for listening.